And the next session is the first panel of the day, which is on can India play a major role in creating a new global and economic and political order? Yes, it's India's turn. We have with us for this session Ms. Nidhi Jain, General Manager East, Hindustan Unilever Limited, and Dr. Ashwini Deshpande, Head of the Department Economics and Professor of Economics, Ashoka University. We unfortunately again could not have Dr. Sanjay Kathuria. He's with us virtually. It's again a last moment development, some medical exigency at his end. Dr. Sanjay Kathuria, Visiting Senior Fellow, Center for Social and Economic Progress. And we have, they will be in conversation with Mr. Shubhadeep Ghosh, the Director General of BCCNI. So may I request the speakers physically present to kindly take their seat once the dais is ready. May I request the honorable speakers to kindly take their seats in the stage. Ms. Nidhi Jain, Dr. Ashwini Deshpande, Mr. Shubhadeep Ghosh. Do we have Dr. Kathuria also virtually? AV desk. Do we have Dr. Kathuria virtually? Can we see him once? All right. So we are all set. Request the audience to kindly settle down as we start the next session. I'll pass it on to Mr. Shubhadeep Ghosh, Director General, BCCI, to take it forward from here. Thank you. Just a small disclaimer for the speakers and the moderator. We have a timer going for the session. We will raise a small alarm when we are 5 minutes to go to the session. 5 minutes to go, right? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ombit. It's a pleasure for us to commence the first, I would say, technical session, one in which we kind of try and address some of the questions that we are facing as a country as we are progressing towards our dream of Viksit Bharat in 2047. So the topic is, can India play a major role in creating a global, new global economic and political order? And we hope and believe that yes, it's India's turn. Now this morning, as I was going through the papers, they're all abuzz with a potential US-India trade deal finally happening. The USTR has said that the US has received the best ever offer from India. And in the inside pages, we have seen that our Chief Economic Advisor, Dr. V. Anantha Nageswaran, has said, in fact, he was in Kolkata a few months back at the Chamber's AGM in September. And at that point of time, he had predicted that this, penal rate of 50% tariff won't be there for long. And he was predicting that it will, by end of November, it should be gone. And yesterday, I mean, in today's paper, it has come out that, he has said that definitely, he will be very surprised if it doesn't go away before the end of this financial year. Having said that, looking at an US-India trade deal, but India is not just about a US-India trade deal. India is a country, as our opening session speaker was pointing out to us, it's the world's largest democracy. We are fourth largest economy in the world. We have the fourth largest military in the world. We are discussing, going to discuss geopolitics, so I thought let me talk about, our, strategic advantages as well. we are, in fact, a firm believer in strategic autonomy, and at the same time, we are leading, in digital public infrastructure. We are the first responder in regional crisis, and we have taken a leadership role in climate mitigation. With all that, our trade, of course, plays a major part. Again, our inaugural session speakers pointed out that we have been sort of working towards a better trade sort of situation. We have been running deficits with many countries. With US, it was the only country with running surpluses. But at the same time, we are, as a nation, we are, facing sort of challenges both in the area of, strategic, issues, as well as in the areas of, I would say, for instance, our currency is, sort of devaluing all the time. We would probably like to shore it up a little bit more. So we thought that this session, let us try and, sort of, answer a few critical questions that are, coming up as we, try and take a leadership, more, sort of prominent role in the global order in terms of our, economic progress. Now, we have with us three very eminent panelists. Two are with us on the dais. We have from on my extreme right, we have Dr. Ashwini Deshpande. She's a professor and head of the Department of Economics in Ashoka. She's a recipient of the V.K.R.V. Rao Award given to economists under 45 for their significant contributions to Indian economic studies. She has also is an expert and a prolific author on growth and inclusivity issues. And she has a sharp eye out for the human impact of economic structures. To my right is Ms. Nidhi Jain, General Manager, East Hindustan Unilever. Nidhi is a chartered accountant and a company secretary. She has close to 2 decades of experience across finance, business, including commercial finance. And interestingly, she represents a company which has over $7.2 billion turnover in India alone, reaches 90% of Indian households, and basically she's representing an organization which has the pulse of the Indian consumer. So that's what she brings to the table today. We also have Dr. Sanjay Kathuria joining online. I hope you can hear us, sir. Dr. Kathuria has close to 3 decades of experience at the World Bank and a decade at ICRIER in New Delhi. He is currently a visiting senior fellow, Center for Social and Economic Progress, and a preeminent thinker and commentator on economic development. So what I'll do is I'll pose a question to all the panelists and request them to sort of briefly respond in 2 to 3 minutes, and then we will take the dialogue forward with further more in-depth questions. So here I go. If I can request Dr. Deshpande to commence. What, in your opinion, is the most powerful advantage that India brings to the table that no other nation can match? And the same question I will be asking Nidhi as well as Sanjay, who's joining online. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you for inviting me here. Very briefly, we've heard a lot about the demographic dividend, which is the young age composition of India's population. That could be an advantage. So it has a potential to be an advantage, provided the youth are productively employed and they are unleashing their productive capacities in increasing India's manufacturing services, the whole menu of output that India produces. I'm not sure that we are there yet, so I think it has the potential to be a huge advantage. But it cannot, just the existence of a young population is not an advantage. In fact, if they are not productively employed or if they are not gainfully employed, then it can actually cause many more social and economic problems than it be an advantage.
Thank you, Nidhi.
I think no surprises here, as ma'am also said, and we've heard Ms. Meera as well as Dr. Sanjay as well. Of course, the demographic dividend is in definite advantage for a country like ours. Just imagine the kind of population we have, the kind of youth we have got, right? Our median age for the... Okay. So the median age of the country is 29. Right? More than 69% of the population is less than 35, which means we have a lot of working capital available, working human capital available. That is one. Second, no surprise again, when you have such a huge base and you still grow at the rate of 6.5%, but our ambition being 8% to become a developed country, that's another advantage, because such a huge base growing at such a high rate, which is not available for everyone in the world, or very few countries can claim the base of our size and yet growing at that level. Third, I think as an Indian, I mean, we have studied in our history, we have seen it in our, even the recent development, etc. The entrepreneurial skill set, the spirit of ability to do trade is very, very significant for India. And in history, there are always segments when you have a particular advantage to become the most developed, be it arms and ammunition at sometimes industrial revolution, sometimes internet revolution. This is the era where the trade is the biggest economic power you have got, and Indians have fundamentally very high entrepreneurial skill. And the fourth advantage, in my opinion, is the digital infrastructure which we have got. While our physical infrastructure still questionable, I would say it's still in the developing space. While the government has done a lot, we can see a lot of investment coming into that space, but digital infrastructure, having worked in various countries, etc., it's still something to envy of, right? We have covered up, not fully, but physical infrastructure has its own role to play, but when it comes to digital infrastructure, we have got that as an advantage as good as any other developed country. So in my opinion, these are the four things which are to the advantage of India.
Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Kathuria.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to Rising Asia Foundation and BCCI for having me speak here. Sorry, I can't join you all in person. So for me, this is an opening, just an opening statement here in your, I think the idea, the fact, what India can do uniquely to the world, present, is the idea that democracy is not inimical to development. I think that is my, what has been called by Kapoor and Subramanian as a precocious democracy. It shows the world, that at scale, democracy can in fact be a catalyst for inclusive progress. We had universal suffrage before prosperity. It helped India's legitimacy, created trust. And in turn, when reforms happened, they were consensus-based. So you don't have a reform reversal like you have seen in many other countries in the world. So there are no other examples, I think, in the world of the scale of India. And here India has been a beacon to the world. And if it reasserts that advantage, I think that is the, for me, the idea that true inclusive democracy can be a beacon, and there is in no way contradictory to the idea of growth.
Thank you very much. So basically, I think three aspects came out. One is the demographic dividend that we have, provided our sort of population is employable, entrepreneurial skills, digital infrastructure, and of course the weight and the experience of our democracy itself by itself. So Dr. Deshpande, I mean, actually, when you talked about the demographic dividend, I mean, you kind of stepped into my second question in any case. there are two parts to this. One is, I mean, economists have probably, you are probably bored, by now answering this question, but still it's quite, captivating a question nonetheless, is that how effectively is our growth being translated into inclusive development? That's what we learn in the first, year in economics. That's part A of my question. Second is, going into your, sort of comment, that how important is to ensure that this growth remains employment intensive rather than disproportionately towards capital and tech. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you for those questions. So, inclusive development is a phrase that gets used a lot as a slogan, but I think we need to think of it as more than a slogan. India is an extremely diverse country in terms of its social composition. There are people speaking different languages, people belong to different religions, different caste groups, there are men and women. Inclusive development means that there are no groups that are disproportionately left out from the benefits of high growth. And we have to ask ourselves, is that really happening or not? So there are multiple indices that you can look at, multiple metrics that you can look at. Are there certain groups that are disproportionately poorer than certain other groups? Are there certain groups that are disproportionately less in the labor force compared to other groups? Are there wage gaps? Are there gaps in occupation levels? And many other, asset ownership, wealth ownership, etc. If the data show substantial gaps that have not really closed or have closed very little, one would be forced to draw the conclusion that the growth is not as inclusive as it should be. I work with data, national level data, I believe in evidence, and so I think this question needs to be examined with evidence. And on that, let me just take one example, which is the question of female labor force participation rates. So Indian women are not as much as in paid employment as they could be, or as women in other countries at similar levels of economic development. So there is a very clear gender gap in labor force participation rates. There is, of course, the gender wage gap, which is true in all countries. But I think the one that we need to be focusing on is female labor force participation rate. And that links also a certain extent to the second question, which is, why do we not see women as much in the labor force as they could be? Given that they are highly educated now, gender gaps in education have been closing, almost to the point of elimination. Total fertility rate is down. We are at replacement level, so it's not as though there are lots of children being born. And by the way, the narrative that certain groups have very high fertility rates compared to certain other groups, that's not supported by evidence. So across all groups, all social groups, we've had a decline in total fertility rate. So number of children being born is at replacement. Maternal mortality rates have dramatically gone down. Infant mortality rates have dramatically gone down. Education levels of women have increased. All of these factors, and we have a fairly decent rate of growth, which means total output is increasing. All this combination of factors in all other societies and historically have led to a dramatic increase in female labor force participation rates, but not in India. So we have to ask ourselves, is there something about the nature of employment creation, particularly the sectors that are driving growth? Are they creating enough jobs? Or is their contribution to GDP or to value added being driven by capital and technology rather than by labor? And if that is the case, then are there enough jobs that women, and for that matter even men, could work in if they wanted to be in paid employment? Now, the majority of India's population is still rural. We don't have the census yet, but it couldn't be below 50%. I don't think that's what it's going to be. So its majority is still rural. And so we have to ask ourselves, what are the avenues for paid employment in rural India? Other than agriculture and construction, there is very little that women can participate in. And migration for the sake of work for women is not that large, it's not that easy, etc. So I think it all boils down to labor-intensive, non-farm employment opportunities that are not as in high numbers as they should be. In the previous session, there was a lot of talk of China. what China did differently, or for that matter, East Asian countries did differently, was to create avenues for employment, labor-intensive, low productivity, not very high-tech employment opportunities, but plentiful opportunities. And that drew women into the labor force. And I think that's what we would need to think of as well as a model for development. Also, because it'll absorb the huge, surplus manpower that we have, labor power. And so I think the question of inclusive development and employment, labor-intensive growth, I think are kind of linked. Our services add a lot of value to the GDP, so GDP is driven by the service sector, but the services sector is not very employment intensive. It's very capital and technology intensive, and in fact, all the sectors that have had a relatively high female intensity are sectors that are actually not either growing or face some external barriers, like trade barriers, like jewelry, for example, or even now with the Trump tariffs, even apparel is going to be facing high tariffs. So I think the question of gender parity in the labor force, I think, is a very paramount question. And similarly, when you think of caste groups or religious groups, you do find substantial gaps in terms of several of the metrics that I talked about, employment rate, proportion in white-collar jobs, proportion in the high end of the occupational spectrum. So I think it would be reasonable to conclude that we have a long agenda ahead of us in terms of achieving inclusive development. And I think that it should not remain a mere slogan, but actually translate into actionable policy on the ground, so that all demographic groups in India benefit from and contribute to rate of growth and development in the country.
Thank you very, very much. So basically, the gender gap in labor, and of course, that translates into the need for non-farm labor-intensive employment opportunities. From employment side, if I can move to the other side of the equation, which is the demand side, and demand is sort of driven mostly by consumption and investments. So you are from HUL. As I said, you have the pulse of the Indian consumer. What is, in your opinion, I mean, again, how strong can Indian domestic brands help to carry this India's broader and economic narrative onto the global stage? And do you think that India's FMCG and consumer-driven enterprises can integrate more deeply into global markets, although at the same time sort of shaping sustainability, quality, and governance standards? If you can please elaborate.
So thank you for asking this question, because as I earlier said, for India, in my opinion, the trade is our DNA. The business and the growth of business is our DNA, and it's not just for HUL or FMCG, it's spread across the country. Ma'am also spoke about like how inclusive we have to make the growth. Meera ma'am also spoke about it, that how we need to create the the employment for smaller entrepreneurs as well. Now coming to the how Indian brands can create the impact. See, the future of business or the future of growth is going to be tech-driven, human-led, and sustainable. So all three of it. When it comes to sustainability, it is our responsibility that we ensure that our brands are renewable, recyclable, and repairable also. And again, taking back to the history of Indian consumers or the Indian culture, this comes very naturally to us as India. Like, look at the practices which a farmer does in a deep rural of India. It will be, by the way, similar to what the most developed consumer in the Europe might be wanting. And today the consumers are willing to pay the premium for if something is good for the planet, good for the overall environment. As per one of these study, the economic damage which can happen due to all the issues we are facing on the sustainability or the the climate change, as we say, is $38 billion by 2049. It's a huge value. It can cost us 10% year on year on our overall management of the cost. And we are facing it. Look at the way the rains are happening. Look at the way floods are happening. It all disturbs economic activities as well. So it's not an option. It is the necessity. And again, the good part is consumers are willing to pay for it. So on sustainability, packaging, be it product innovation, be it the manufacturing practices, be it the procurement, all four of them have to be really sustainable is the number one point. Second, quality. You know, our test of pride will be when the global consumers are looking for products which have the tag of Made in India. So we need to have those certification labs or those kind of policies where the quality of Indian products can be ensured when we are exporting them. That is this on the quality which you asked. Third, see, for the consumers or the investors sitting outside India, transparency is a very important part of their choices because they don't know physically many a times what's happening in the country. So our reporting standards, our ESG standard, like now the SEBI has come up with BRSR, I'm talking about the ESG part of it. But overall, our practices have to be transparent for the investors and the consumers sitting outside India to believe in Indian products and Indian businesses. That's on the corporate governance. Last piece I'll pick up, as you mentioned, is the policy part of it. The way I look at the policy and, you know, the Indian government, needless to say, is progressing in that direction, is three-pronged in the way I look at it. One, what are my policies to improve my global trade? Even though there is protectionism, there is a, you know, the tariff war, etc. But in long term, you need to make, or you need to ensure, we also, you know, heard from ma'am about how China has that advantage and not letting it go. And how does India become equally competitive to some of our competition when it comes to global trade? And that's where the policy intervention, be it in the form of special economic zones, be it in form of the Forex regulation or the FDI regulation, in line with the current requirement. And our government keep doing it. I'm not saying that it's not happening because at the same time, these are the regulations which have protected us from the global meltdown crisis, etc. also. So that's on the policy when it comes to exports or the global trade. For Indian policies, again, while we have good digital infrastructure, but the physical infrastructure and investment behind it is very much needed for the Indian players or the Indian trade to grow and thrive. So that's for you know, the Indian business to happen. And the third, as I said, for inclusive growth, what are our policies or what are our intervention to ensure that even the small entrepreneurs, the good changes which have happened recently, MSME regulation, the GST change, etc. But we need to keep moving forward and with speed in all the three directions to ensure that Indian entrepreneurs and the Indian brands are making an impact in the global world as well.
Thank you very much. So, you know, from Made in India and the need to become more competitive in order to, you know, sort of sustain the momentum that we have in the, you know, global stage. I will move on to Dr. Kathuria. Can you please ask, you know, sort of let us know, I mean, we are talking about global supply chain and there are geopolitical risks. Now, how well positioned is India to leverage initiatives like Make in India? We heard about Made in India, but now let me turn to Make in India. And how well positioned is India to leverage initiatives like Make in India to emerge as a central hub in global value chains? The second, you know, question, since we have a little less time, I'm kind of, you know, clubbing two more or less similar questions together, is that India is a firm believer in strategic autonomy. And, you know, our, you know, principles are still rooted in, you know, the non-aligned, you know, movement principles that was, you know, founded so many, you know, decades back. What is, you know, sort of India's ability to project, you know, sort of power and influence in a stable political order? Because that will also impact, you know, our participation in, you know, GVCs in the broader, you know, Indo-Pacific region. Over to you, Dr. Kathuria.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So, the tariffs that India has seen now, I mean, in a sense, the trade war is not new, right? We've been having these trade wars since 2017 and between the US-China trade wars. And if you look at in the US market, India has not been able to gain as much as we anticipated. Even before, the punitive US tariffs, which are very recent, India's gain in the US market since 2017 have been much less, for example, than Vietnam, Mexico, Turkey, and others. So I think there is a long way to go before one can actually say that, that we have achieved success in terms of our ongoing policies for whatever you might want to call them, Make in India or Atmanirbhar and so on. I think there are some critical reforms that need to be done, and I will start with the first one, which is a kind of a tariff rationalization, deeper free trade agreements, giving business more freedom. I think that is still some way away. And I also want to echo a couple of things that previous speakers have said. I want to reiterate what Ashwini said about female labor force participation. The numbers are very, very different between, if you look at China, as Ashwini was speaking, I just looked at the number again. The projection, China's female labor force participation in 24 was 70%. India, even if you accept that number, was 35%. Okay, so you are really with half the labor force, half the population, not really participating fully. We are giving ourselves a massive disadvantage in terms of both the quality of skills and the quantity of skills available. And the other element is technology. I think we are, given that we are a middle-income country, increasing in sophistication, we have to more and more become a technology maker, not just a technology recipient, although there is a lot more room to absorb technology. I'm not saying we don't do that, but we have to start doing more and more technology development. We are very, very far away from that, especially when you compare it with what our competitor China is doing, which is a global leader in many fields now. I think something that Sanjay Baru spoke of. And in this kind of brave new world, deeper, a little bit more amplification of what I mean on the regional, on the free trade agreements. Regional integration in this brave new world really becomes much more important. And unless we resolve our own neighborhood, right, South Asia, we cannot achieve these kinds of global ambitions that we have. And in this context, we have to take care of South Asia. We are negotiating with the European Union. I think that is a very important one. But we also have to think about Asia more broadly. Again, this is a Rising Asia Foundation. And we are really, our relationship with Asia on trade and economic linkages is well below potential. And there, I think we need to be thinking about things like RCEP and CPTPP. And you asked a question about, how does India influence and, global governance, this kind of strategic autonomy issue. I think we have to realize one thing that we now have an advantage on is that if we put the two major powers of the world in perspective, the US and China, the US is charting a very different world since Liberation Day, right? Since April. And as for China, the world has long been looking for China plus one, and China has shown an affinity for weaponizing trade, right? If you look at Japan, Australia, and many others have been at the brunt of receiving China's, in this receiving end of China's weaponization. So in this world, the world is looking for partnerships with powers that are credible and are looking for open rules-based transparency, right? So on both counts, as a supplier and as a demand, now India's demand in world as an imports is approaching $1 trillion. Right? if you include both goods and services. So it is not a trivial importer anymore, and therefore it becomes a credible partner. But on both counts, becoming a really serious and credible China plus one, and in terms of creating, helping to create a rules-based, transparent order, not create, but to go back to that kind of I think India can rise to that equation, but has to shed its inhibition, its protectionist instincts, which are very evident for the last 7 or 8 years. And it can punch. It is currently punching well below its weight. Recent working paper, a paper that is forthcoming in CSEP that my colleagues and I are doing, showing that we have leaving on the table at least $500 billion worth of goods exports, just goods exports, and corresponding imports. So there is potential for India to count much more, even given its current configuration, and really become a credible partner to the world, and something that the world is looking for. But for that, many of the things that I pointed to have to be done.
Thank you, Dr. Kathuria. Just one final question to all the panelists. 30-second response, please, before we conclude. We started with Viksit Bharat. Where do you see India or Bharat in 2047? I know I'm being unfair with the question. Can't be answered in 30 seconds, but whatever comes to your mind, ma'am.
I don't know about Viksit or not, but I do hope that we are able to increase our rate of growth on the basis of the productive human resources that we have in plenty, and we are able to eliminate disparities between groups, between genders, between castes, between religions, and so we actually achieve inclusive development.
So for me, as I said earlier, it is tech-driven, human-led, and sustainable, and definitely Viksit.
Dr. Kathuria?
Yes, thank you. What I would like to see, let's say if we project a decade from now, what I would like us to be is to see a rise of a potential power, global power, but in a peaceful way. We'll still be a middle power in 10 years. But what can be India's unique contribution is a peaceful rise of a potential power, right? Which will be very different, not muscling its way around the world. And this is something reminiscent of what William Dalrymple has chronicled in The Golden Road, right? So India had great spheres of influence both to the east and to the west, but in a very peaceful way in terms of its knowledge, in terms of influence, the soft power. That's where I would like India to be, and we are still very far away from that, I should say, but we have the potential to do it.
Thank you very much. So we started off this session with the question, can India play a major role in creating a new global economic and political order? We end with the answer that yes, we are. Over to you, Sombit.
Thank you so much, Shubhodipta, and indeed it's been a very refreshing and enriching session. So very well, the flow was really brilliant, and yeah, a great round of applause from the audience maybe. Thank you. Can we do the honors now, please? First to Dr. Deshpande. Shubhodipta, if you could kindly do the honors. There's a book from the Rising Asia Foundation and a set of mementos from BCCI and Rising Asia Foundation. To Ms. Nidhi Jain now. Dr. Kathuria will arrange to send it to your residence soon.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sure.
Can we have a group picture, please? Can you just come a little front?